Good afternoon. This is the House Appropriations Committee. It is Friday, February 14th, 2025. Happy Valentine's Day. We're continuing to go through, take testimony on the FY26 budget. Okay. It's to mute, you have to mute it.
Everything's off.
Is the volume all the way down?
Mm-hmm.
I think you should find out.
Oh, got it. It wasn't.
All right, I'll try that again.
Sorry.
Anyway. House Appropriations Committee, just after 1 o'clock on Friday, February 14th. We have with us the Land Access Opportunity Board, Jean Hamilton and Ornella Mata Figueroa.
Muy bien.
So.
You can call the names next week.
So this is our first time seeing you this time, so we will go around and introduce yourselves and we'll fill in the blank seats that are here. And so the first one is normally Dave Iacovoni, sitting immediately to your right from Morrisville.
Good afternoon, welcome. I'm John Kosenska from Burke and I represent the Essex Caledonia District. Nice to meet you.
Mike Nigro, I represent Bennington and Powell. Tom Stevens from Waterbury, representing the Washington Chittenden District.
Good afternoon, Jim Harrison from the town of Chittenden, also represent Mendon, California.
I'm Robin Scheid from Middlebury.
Tiff Lilly, Burlington.
Trevor Squirrel, Underhill and Jericho.
I'm Wayne LaRush from Franklin, Berkshire. Double
Double booked, okay.
Hi, I'm Mike Murwicky, and I'm from the Wyndham Ford District, and that's Buckingham.
And then Lynn Dickinson from St. Albans Town had to go out for a meeting, so she's also not here. We're kind of going in and out with budget things. So anyway, welcome. Glad to have you here. We have your information. So introduce yourselves if you would for the record and then take it away, please.
Ornella Mata Figueroa, Co-Director of Land Access and Opportunity Board.
I'm Jean Hamilton, the other co-director for the LAOB.
Thank you. We begin everywhere we land with the slide that's up on the board right now. These are our touchstones. And anywhere we land, we invite folks to work together with these touchstones in mind. We listen generously and we speak our truth from our heart and mind. We make the way that we work together an example of what is possible. And we trust that we all hold a piece of the puzzle and that we need each other's pieces to understand the whole picture. Do you all agree to work with those touchstones with us during our time together? Thank you. We've introduced ourselves. We're here today to give a little bit of an overview of our LAOB for folks that have not met us yet. And the LAOB was first established in 2022 as an independent state board to address disparities in land and home ownership for Vermonters who have been marginalized from land and home ownership. Who are these historically marginalized populations? All poor and low-income Vermonters, Vermonters with developmental disabilities, LGBTQIA Vermonters, immigrant people new to Vermont, and Vermonters who are people of color. Specifically, the LAOB was created to improve access, grow ideas, and improve the existing systems to address prevalent wealth disparities by creating new opportunities for those who have been most marginalized. We believe foundationally that when those who are most marginalized do better, then we all do better. These are our priority objectives. We were created to address historical barriers such as segregation, the exclusionary zoning laws. We were created to promote opportunities for land access and create welcoming communities. And we're doing that via professional development in a lot of different sectors, grant programs, and trust building in the community to seek out and create, fund, and build alternative models, which we're doing by shifting community engagement strategies more transparency and ownership and bringing representation from those who are most marginalized into policy and create the economic and social conditions to make Vermont a haven, which we're doing by looking at the judicial and political constraints that have allowed intergenerational poverty to flourish. These are the LAOB appointing authorities. Yes.
Can you just explain what you mean by appointing authorities?
So in our founding statute, we were defined, our founding statute defined these appointing authorities, which represent our board. These are our board members or the organizations that are represented on our board.
Somebody from each of these organizations.
Two. Yeah. We have a primary and a secondary board member from each one of these organizations, or an alternate, not a secondary. And often we have both individuals join us. People like to work on our board, and we have a very involved and present board. If you look at the organizations represented here, like you see the LAOB's purpose of empowering communities. And yeah, this is like what we feel is like our most, the power of the LAOB is this representative board. Through our work, we've had many community engagement events, and some of the needs that were identified are listed here. Our communities really need coaches, other translation and support to navigate complex banking and legal systems. We've also heard a need for support with maintaining homes, especially in the face of all of the climate disasters, and a lot of needs for financial support to overcome lack of intergenerational wealth. So what is the LAOB approach? We've looked at everything we did last year, and we saw that there was like a pattern in the work that we were doing, which we grouped into these three buckets: strengthening Vermont's human infrastructure, stabilizing housing, and improving land access. So we've been growing and nourishing the roots from where good programs grow. We hired us, not us, the board hired us, and we started a year ago in January. We've been building trust and confidence with communities across Vermont, encouraging community members to believe that their participation and leadership really matters. We've also been working to establish credibility and value with housing and land access institutions, using our advisory powers to offer fresh perspectives and to encourage growth mindset. We've been also researching, asking a lot of questions, and identifying the most effective places for the LAOB to add value to the system. Looking for leverage points to unlock new community potential, and be very, very, very careful to create any duplication or program redundancy. And we've been identifying and securing opportunities to leverage complementary and new funding sources for our communities as well through federal and private funding.
I have a quick question on the slide about housing and land access institutions. So are you talking to like the Vermont Housing Finance Agency that does first-time home buyer and land trusts and things like that? That's kind of the people that you've been talking to.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Great.
So what are the problems we are seeing? We're seeing that our job as the Land Access and Opportunity Board is to interpret what we're hearing from our communities on the ground, along with what we're seeing in all of these institutions. And these are some of the problems. We're seeing that Vermont needs more people power. Vermont needs families and worker and participation in public policy, in public processes. We see a disconnection between public institutions and the people that they are trying to serve. We see a lot of silos, preventing us from unlocking creative solutions and preventing us from working together. We see that the compounding crises are threatening our communities materially and emotionally. And we also see that those who are most marginalized are hit hardest by all of the crisis. The lack of effective solutions is inefficient and expensive.
Okay, I'll pick it up from here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, just really underscoring that through our community engagement and then our engagement with the institutions that are serving community members and what we've been able to do is kind of bring a fresh perspective through which we've been looking at all of our housing and land systems in Vermont. And it's been, I don't think we like set out imagining that this is what year one would look like, but at the end of year one for us as staff, we really, I think proud is the adjective, but maybe more encouraged is the adjective to see that we've been able to form really effective, trusting relationships, both on the institutional side with organizations like the HFA and also with agencies like ACCD and Agency of Agriculture, and on the community side. We have many trusted relationships with community members who have very little trust in public systems and public institutions. And so we're very effectively positioned right now to be a bridge and to unlock this human power that has been currently locked up as these institutions and people are operating in silos and not talking to each other. So these next three slides are some data points to give you a sense of, like, when we say we've been talking to institutions, when we say we've been using our advisory powers or we've been talking to community members, what has that looked like? So this first slide is about our advisory powers and community engagement, which really is like a special thing we're enabled to do through our statute, is to advise into the systems that impact Vermont's housing and land. We do that with the voices of our community members that we hear through community engagement. That's looked like workshops at conferences. We participated very actively in the Act 181 study group hosted by Department of Housing and Community Development. We were very involved in the Cannabis Control Board's Act 166 study group. We've been holding our own mini conferences and professional development opportunities for the communities we serve. For example, we've been working with the Developmental Disabilities Council and specifically their Housing Initiative Working Group to really understand where has that group of families has been working tirelessly for years, and they are continue to be stymied. Why? So we've been linking them up with Jenny, the Director of Housing at VHCB, who's now linking up with Dale and the staff there, and we're seeing these webs starting to be built. So you guys have the slides. If there are specific data points on here that you want to dig into, please do stop me. Capacity building is another big part of our work. Ornella referenced how we've been encouraging our community members to seek funds and build their capacity to do the projects that their community members need. Of course, the sort of old strategy of like, we need to do a better job of getting federal money is thrown up in the air right now. But as a lifelong fundraiser or career-long fundraiser, I'm unintimidated and we will pivot to philanthropy if we need to. We know that we can do a better job in this state and across our community organizations and across our agencies of getting more money into the system through philanthropy, through the federal government, through regional partnerships. And we have worked really actively on that through our first year. We also are empowered through our enabling statute to provide direct benefit to communities in the form of grants and other payments. So we have been supporting some of the key community organizations in our state. We have also embarked on a really interesting and creative garden grant project with VHCB that really lives at the intersection of housing and conservation by putting garden access in affordable housing situations. We are right in the process of launching some of our sort of flagship programs that we've been working on developing over this last year. So emergency preparedness grants to help communities really think about and prepare for what happens when our towns get flooded again this year. Are we going to have community centers with tools and generators that can be lent out? You know, is there going to be good information and resources to help those communities navigate? We are launching a secure housing coaches program, which will position 5 full-time coaches around the state with targeted sort of case management capacity to liaise and hold hands with families as they secure housing in the form of home ownership or potentially something outside of home ownership, but really trying to help families not just say, go take the HUD course, but okay, what happens when you took the home buyers course? How were you treated? What did you get? What happens when you talk to the home ownership center? Did they treat you okay? Did you get the information you? Let's go to that lender. Did they treat you right? What were your barriers there? And so with that navigation, we're hoping to get people into homes, but also all of this work informs our advisory power so that the LAOB as an institution of its own can bring that advice back into the systems and say, here are the persistent barriers that continue. We are in the process of launching a technical assistance program for emerging developers with Vermont Housing Finance Agency. The intention of that is to empower more community members to be able to build housing in their communities. So really expanding the pool of who counts as a developer and empowering more people to step up into that critical position in the supply chain. And then these next 2 programs are what we envision for FY26, and you'll see a little bit more about them in our budget materials. Just a quick note on our legislative priorities. Obviously, funding is one of them. What we are presenting today in a budget is counts on $5.6 million, which would be coming from a 25% allocation of the cannabis excise tax. This recommendation comes from the Cannabis Control Board's Act 166 study that came into this body in January. The CCB has long been trying to establish a community reinvestment fund, which it has always seen as critical and one of the hallmarks of a good functioning regulated marketplace for cannabis. Yes,
Yeah, I just want to go back to
absolutely.
25% of the cannabis.
Yes.
That's not happening today, right?
That is not happening today. So this would be a new, this is, when you say today, you mean, are we already receiving that? No.
Okay, so this conceivably will take away from what the general fund is getting from the cannabis excise.
That is the right interpretation, yes.
Okay, how much money is that?
That is 5 points. So the JFO estimated that I think it was I would get a little bit confused about how, okay, so whether it was FY25's estimation or what, 5.6 is the approximate ballpark
Is that
number.
in addition to the money that's already been proposed by the governor for your budget?
Great question. What we would imagine, this budget that we are proposing to you is a 5.6, it's actually a 5.9 million because we're proposing a slight carryover from the funds we have now.
Okay.
But no, it is not additive, 5.6 on top.
So total, okay.
Exactly.
Just a comment.
Yeah.
So the LAOB is in the budget right now at $1.6 million, which prior to this recommendation from the Cannabis Board
Okay.
was pretty much on what the LAOB had proposed and had worked with the administration on. So the governor's recommend is at 1.6 of general fund dollars still as a one-time. They're not in as a base yet.
Okay.
This proposal came in after the budget. And so then if it moves forward, then the decision of whether this
And that's-
5.6.
So that idea originated with the Cannabis Control Board.
It was a working group, so we were one member of that, but yes, it was CCB hosted it and yes.
This is very helpful. I'm just trying to get an idea every time in essence, where it comes from is taking from the general fund that we are already short on in terms of our expenditures. So, that's fine. So that the base funding is there. It's that basic difference, that 3 million or
4 million.
4 million.
The one time, it's a one-time.
That's right.
But the one time
One-time
If
general
this
fund.
if this 5.6 ends up being not part of the conversation,
Yeah.
there is 1.6 in the general fund.
Okay,
Right, and
thank you.
just for our own little internal, Mike, you have the Cannabis Control Board, do you not?
Yes, I do.
So you guys can talk about this.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. It's the first I've heard of it, so it's a rep, that's good.
It's just, so your current funding has supported everything you've done in presenting here so far with all the project, connections,
Yes.
projects, outreach.
Right, so we have
Coordination
received
of-
over 3 appropriation cycles, just shy of $2 million. And yes, and so this year, so what is in the administration's proposal, as Representative Stevens said, is 1.6 of
Right.
one-time funding. We are very much in a position now that we see a future for LAOB. We think it is important that we look for, ongoing base funding moving forward. And happy to talk in more detail with the right folks about the concept of community reinvestment as tied to a priority for cannabis excise tax. But this slide that I just tossed up here shows all of these colors, everything except for this sort of brighter blue. This is basically what fits into the 1.6. And then when we start looking at the community reinvestment possibilities that come from a 25%, fixed allocation, ongoing allocation from cannabis excise, we are talking about this 3.65 of new direct service program cost. And the way that we are conceiving of that, like what really opens up as an opportunity, is money going directly into the hands of Vermonters to secure homes through down payment assistance grants and to build homes through capital for these emerging developers that we're providing technical assistance for right now.
Just one follow-up question.
Yes, absolutely.
You mentioned philanthropy. Have you started that process of making those connections?
Yes,
Add to what you're currently doing here?
absolutely. So this little yellow chunk, this is not philanthropy, but it is an example of where we have gone out and gotten funds. So we did get an award from EPA for a regional project that is very much up in the air now since this new administration has come into place. But the concept of this is we would be eligible for $525,000 over 3 years to basically provide capacity building to community organizations who would then apply for a $48 million pool of money that, again, has been awarded to the nonprofit that is running this project. That $48 million is supposed to make grants between $75,000 and $350,000 to municipalities or community groups working on environmental justice issues. That includes stormwater management, lead abatement, pollution remediation, food security, any number of issues that are very relevant to our Vermont communities. Of course, it's called environmental justice. So right now it is a big question mark of if those funds will become available. I wish today we were sitting here telling you, we're so excited that these grants are launched because they've launched. We just don't know if they'll be funded. We were very excited about the amount of funding that Vermont was poised to get from these funds. So that is an example of money we have brought in. We are also very actively talking with Vermont Community Foundation, New England Grassroots Fund, always eyes wide open for other federal opportunities. We have at this point primarily directed those funds as much as we can to our communities to utilize because we see that that is an essential function of our capacity building purpose. But, we do have capacity to fundraise as well.
Thank you for that.
Yes, thank you for the question.
So the 5.6 million, some of that's going to be for base funding for you, and then you're going to use it on housing kinds of projects. So yeah, it bothers me that we're raising money through a cannabis program, and we have all kinds of drug-related issues in the state. And with the hospitals, with our prisons and everything that's costing us millions and millions of dollars. And it seems peculiar that we would divert money from a program that's raising money, that's dealing with this and being used for some.
It wouldn't be diverted. So right now with the cannabis excise tax, 30% of it goes to the program for substance misuse prevention, and that's not going to change by statute. That's
But
not
it's-
changing.
But does what that portion is that's going to drug-related things doesn't seem to be enough. See what I mean? I mean, we have huge problems in the drug.
Do you want to?
I just want to say, we also have the opioid settlement fund, and then this additional 22 million that just came through the Attorney General's office, which, you know, the administration hasn't decided where it wants that to go, but that there's actually way more money in the system to foster prevention, treatment, and rehabilitation activities than there ever has been.
Well, and I apologize, was a little tangential for me. to make.
No, I think it's
I
a
just wanted to-
very
Yeah,
valid
well, a
question.
lot of people like the Cannabis Control Board. We hear about it a lot, so,
And if I,
yeah,
Meg?
and then Mike and then you.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike. You had your hand up before.
Thank you for your work. I'm from Windham County. And one of the projects we have in Windham County is Susu Farm. Are you familiar with Susu? Are you working with them?
Yes,
Okay, great.
Yeah.
They're looking for, and are there other projects in Windham County that I should know about?
we have been working really closely with an individual named Ana Mejia. I don't know if you know her. She's actually based in Windsor, but works with Windsor and Wyndham Housing Trust and has been a real statewide leader of financial empowerment. She does financial empowerment coaching and home buyers coaching within Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust, and also through an initiative she started on her own and then partnered with the Root Social Justice Center and NAACP. She's a real treasure of that part of Vermont, and we're really happy to partner with her.
And it's helped shape up our secure housing coach program with a lot of really valuable feedback.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And I hope at some point we may hear from Susu here in terms of their talking with agriculture, but perhaps appropriation. They're an amazing 37-acre Afro-Indigenous farm that providing food to the community, providing cultural sustenance to the community, and also I think it fits in with some of the work that you're doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would assume that policy committee is probably handling
They are.
that. Yeah,
They're super nice.
Good.
Working with them right there.
great. Tom, you wanted to.
And just to point out that the fund, the excise tax fund, or whatever it's called from their level, does have, along with the 30% substance abuse, which is carved off. There is within the conceived mission of that fund to have a certain social, what we've been calling recently, social equity program. And there's not really very many state-oriented. The Cannabis Board doesn't have right now access to these same programs the way that LEOB has developed over the last, 1 year since you've taken over, but really 2 years since they started. And I don't want to get distracted. I think on behalf of the board, I think
Right.
knowing that the 5.6 is a question.
Right.
And would require testimony both in the policy committees and here. But it is there, and this fund is meant to work on these areas that are not conventionally covered by the rest of our programming. So that's,
And there's
good
a
to-
really good case that we can make about how housing security is substance abuse prevention.
Absolutely.
Because one of the ACEs metrics, and when we look at what makes people vulnerable to becoming a substance user, insecure housing is a big part of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm sorry that we normally include slides about the CCB Community Reinvestment Fund and those recommendations, and we'll make sure we circulate those to you via email afterwards. But the report that they submitted this year has kind of an extensive analysis of how other states have approached community reinvestment. It is standard now across the states that have legalized marketplaces to have an allocation for community reinvestment, recognizing that the war on drugs has really detrimentally impacted the economic well-being of many communities, especially poor and Black and brown communities. And that to do right with a legalized cannabis marketplace, we really need to think about how do we reinvest in those communities and prevent the costly and inefficient use of public dollars that come when we are dealing with crises like an unsheltered crisis, a drug abuse crisis, and an incarceration crisis. You know, there are much more cost-effective ways to deal with these problems, and they typically look like prevention. Yeah, thank you. Is there, I think that's really, so the budget is what we wanted to get in front of you, but we're happy to, you know, take questions. I don't know how much time. I think we're maybe coming up against that.
Right, so-
Okay.
So, this looks like the budget page.
Yes, yeah. So this is, and if you all would like more detailed budget, you know, we're happy to share more. We didn't quite know how much into detail you wanted to get today, but the numbers here are also similar to those in the pie chart. What I'll point out is you know, we pulled out this 3.65 of direct service program costs as this is really like the new programming that we would be able to take on with that investment. These are not new programs per se. These are, as Ornella said, we are very attentive to not being duplicative and being as efficient and effective as we can, which means using the tools we have and identifying where those tools need to be sharpened up. You know, how can we improve existing systems before creating new systems? So we're deep in conversation with BHFA about how, you know, what's going on with their down payment assistance grants. How can we be additive to those to expand who's participating and benefiting from those? And then we have all identified together that we do need more capital to help emerging developers if we do want to see more Vermonters developing housing in the state.
So just in terms of what is in budget now, so we have 1.6 million that was in the governor's budget. Does that include the 224,000 carry forward?
No.
Okay, so we have, so now we're up to 1.8.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm just trying to figure out where,
Yeah.
what's left.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also have the EPA grant.
That one is very much up in the air.
Okay.
Yes, we had it.
Was a contract actually signed?
The contract is being signed today, but even so we don't have it for just to, if you are a federal grant nerd, that the contract is, we are a sub-awardee on a contract that has been signed with a Boston-based public health institution called Health Resources in Action.
Okay,
They have their contract with EPA.
okay,
They have been, which they've had for a year.
Okay.
The program has been rolling out. We are sub-awarding on that
Okay.
as one of 6 anchor organizations, one for each state in New England.
I see, yeah.
So, but
That's a
now
maybe.
that's a maybe.
That's a maybe.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's helpful for me to figure out where you all are. Okay. Does anybody else have anything?
I just have a comment. I mean, so we met last year in the cafeteria, I think in February, when you had both been hired. And I think it's pretty extraordinary what you have been able to put together in less than a year's time. And what the value that I perceive in the work that you've done is that you haven't tried to invent all these new things. You're providing connective tissue across systems that that can use, you know, your your credibility and you know the connections that you have forged with many different communities throughout the state to get the word out about this or that, to do to find out you know who needs the money and who's not able to get loans. I'm, you know, blah, blah, blah. I just think that it's that concept of connective tissue that I think the role that you play is so important and was missing from this kind of work. So my hat is off to you.
And just for the committee's information, so when this was formed now 3 years ago when we passed the legislation. In its infancy, it found a place to stay at VHCB. And VHCB was asked to basically hold a cubicle open for the LAOB and has provided the organization the room to grow, perhaps advice. They have an MOU with how they work with the organization. None of the funding that we contemplate for VHCB goes to LAOB. They have their own appropriation. But in terms of, I suppose, organizational mentorship and access to the groups that they've been working with and the organizations that they've been working with has been really facet of VHCB that we don't often get a chance to hear about, because they're, again, this isn't the first organization that they've nursed and provided kind of an umbrella, an organizational umbrella. And while this won't necessarily mean that the LAOB splinters out of that, it's not oversight, it is really an umbrella. It's another step in making it an independent organization. And I just want to make sure when we talk about it in the future, it get, like anything else for the government, it can get a little, the webs can get a little complicated. But I just want to be clear that the LAOB has a line item unto their own.
Right.
But it's still just a one-time
Right.
Appropriation. So, and it doesn't affect how we work with VHCB. It's not a question of saying, well, if we put
They're
this
the
money.
fiscal agent, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you so much for coming in. We really appreciate hearing about all you've done a lot in the last 12 months.
Yeah.
And we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
So committee, what do we know about next week? What time are we starting on Tuesday? It's 9:30. Okay, so the moment we're starting at 9:30 on Tuesday, saying at the moment, please check your agendas over the weekend, because things could change. Otherwise, the Senate was hopefully going to vote out the budget adjustment today. It looks like they may not vote it out till Tuesday. I spoke with the chair of some appropriations, and I really would like to get this entirely done before we go on March break, which leaves us 2 weeks. So I don't know.
Is that
It's on
unusual?
there.
When do we usually get it?
I don't know. I have to go look at what last year. I thought we had it done before we went home for March break, but it's going to be a committee of the BAA. That we have a committee of conference and be done and have it on our both floors, but there's only 2 weeks left. And I don't know if that's going to happen, but it's sort of nice to go home for the week without having over your head, but it's more to come on that. We shall see. Does anybody have anything else that they need to say, or am I forgetting anything? Have a good Valentine's Day, safe travels home. Don't hurt yourself shoveling snow this weekend. Let's go offline.